thank you before we start for taking the time to share in growing our bliss and our consciousness together. So today we're going to cover the second sutra provided by Patanjali. In this Sutra 1.2, we're going to be covering more of sort of defining what yoga is. So in our first sutra, we looked at why are we going to study yoga. We're going to focus our mind and our energy on one defined path to yoga. So this time we're going to be looking at what really is yoga. So this one in Sanskrit is yogas, Chitta, Vritti, Nirodhan. So we'll look at each part of these Sanskrit words and break them down. So Chitta is consciousness or mind. So this is the first word. We can think of this as our mind, and it's an instrument of thinking. So it's like the computer hardware or the storage. So our mind is what processes all of our sensory experiences in the material world. It connects them to our emotional responses that we feel about what we've experienced, and then it catalogs them into memories, our perceptions, our beliefs, and then ultimately this turns into our personality and our character traits. So this one you can think of as our ego. So this is the part of us that we identify with mostly in error because it's sort of the collection of all of the pictures, snapshots, movies in our minds, the people, the experiences. So we end up getting stuck here often. Consciousness, on the other hand, is like the computer programmer. So the programmer can observe the inputs of data coming in and decide which software should we be uploading, effectively processing all of that data, which data is worth storing, which ones we should delete, and what algorithms that we should be applying. And it is the creator, right? It is the curator of the mind. So consciousness is so at the center of yoga that Patanjali puts it at the beginning of defining what yoga is. So there are many yoga ideas that dive deeper into what consciousness is. It is a theme that runs throughout all of yoga, and how that differs from our mind. So we're going to discuss just two of these terms right now. It's going to be really brief. I'll discuss them further in future videos, but for now I just want to make you aware of them and how they relate to this second sutra. So Adrastri is about being the observer or the seer. So in this case, the seer is the mind that you notice when you're meditating and you start to notice that you're drifting away. It is the one that can see sometimes when you're emotionally responding to something and you want to rein it back in. The observer or the seer is the consciousness that resides above the mind that can direct ourselves back to consciousness, to concentration and to focus. Another related term is sakshi, which is the witness. So I like to think of the witness as when we need to pull ourselves back a little bit and stop taking everything so personally. So sometimes we get very involved with our ego in our dramas and things going on in our life. And with Sakshi, you can pull back a little bit and just witness yourself having these experiences, realizing that things are not permanent, that things continue to be in flux and change, and that sometimes the thoughts you're having might not even be correct. And you're just kind of witnessing it, pulling yourself back a little bit so that you can get some different perspective. So getting to our divine nature. So this is really what our consciousness is. So we witness our minds having thoughts. Our consciousness then can objectively observe these thoughts, and where our mind tend to be a product of the external environment. So our sensors, what's going on around us. It's taking in information, it's forming opinions and making judgments, and that can be correct or not. Our consciousness, so it's always internal, it's within us, and it's consistent because it comes from our true nature, and it's the divine. It's what connects us to source and to the thing that's greater than us. So mind is really just a tool that we need to use, whether expertly or not, and it connects the material body and our material world to our higher consciousness. So really that's what yoga is. It is learning how to use the mind as a tool. So the second word in the Sanskrit in this sutra is Vritti, which is thought constructs. So a thought construct is, you can think of as like a worldview, an ideology, a belief. It is a way that we put our thoughts together to construct reality. Modifications are ways in which our mind uses the sensory information and experiences. It modifies them in a way to categorize things and catalog them. And then we also include in this word movement. So I think of this kind of sometimes as our synapses and our connections, right? So what things have we thought over and over become habitual? We think them, they start rotating like a wheel. So modifications in a bit more detail then. Here we are informed that our chitta, or mind, is prone to thought constructs and mind modifications. So our modifications in our minds can be true. So this meaning we've experienced something in the world and we perceive it correctly and we act accordingly. The modifications can be internally created misconceptions. So in this case, we've taken some information in, but we haven't really perceived it correctly. We've made an error in our thinking, and we're now carrying that error with us. Another modification can be externally provided misconceptions. So think of this as mass media, think of this as commercials and marketing, think about this as your education system, big pharma, maybe some of these ways in which we've been indoctrinated and propagandized in incorrect ways, and we've taken those beliefs with us incorrectly. You can also have memory distortions. So this can just be that we've perceived things, but over time, we've misremembered them. Perhaps some emotional response was triggered, and so we categorized these incorrectly from what they were, making a bigger deal or minimizing things. And then there can be a mixing of dreams. So when we think about our dreams, we spend a lot of time in our subconscious here. Dreams and sleeping is where we make long-term memories. So we can see that when we've taken in a lot of sensory information, the quality of our sleep and the type of dreams that we're having can mix with our long-term memory and provide incorrect modifications. So these constructs do create the movement of our thoughts, which can lead us sometimes to ruminate over and over. And they do over time create the patterns of our belief and our behaviors that we exhibit, because our thoughts and our mind are connected intrinsically to our automatic nervous system, our peripheral and central nervous system. So a lot of these emotions and thinking becomes ingrained in our physical body. So sometimes when things happen, we're not even having them in our mind anymore. They're becoming actual movements of our body that's related to what we've already perceived in our mind, incorrectly or not. Okay, so the final part of this is Nirodha. So we'll break this down into two parts. So Ni means complete, every direction or in every respect. And then we pair this with the next portion, Rodha, which means to confine, restraint, and discipline. So this is really now where we're talking about stilling our minds. And Patanjali guides us to use our consciousness to intuit the truth and to weed out the misconceptions and thought errors that we've had. We are advised to still the mind fluctuations and to become an observer, and again, the witnessing, and to realize that we are not our minds, we are not the ego, and not to identify only there, right? The mind is neither good or bad. It is merely just a tool. And this tool can bridge us between our spirit and the divine and the cell or the material world. And the mind is then this tool that we can use to understand the sensory material world around us, but we need to connect it back to the truth of who we really are. And then the mind just becomes a bridge. So this sutra gives us the first look into the heart and soul of yoga. And it has been translated in multiple ways. As many yoga books that are on the market and websites, you will see a multitude of ways of defining this. So here are just a few of the ones I picked out. Okay, so complete mastery over the modifications of the mind is called yoga. Concentration, or yoga, is the hindering of the modifications of the thinking principle. The thinking principle here is just another way of talking about the mind or the ego. The final one I'll share is yoga is the stilling of fluctuations of the mind. So again, this is all really saying the same thing. It's all uniting mind, body, and spirit. So they are slightly different, the interpretations, depending on how people translate the Sanskrit definitions, but all versions are saying the same thing, that yoga is at its core about studying and mastering our minds. Yoga provides a wealth of information and tools to achieve this ultimate goal. So from the postures or asanas we practice, to our breath work, pranayama, and the ethics and observances we see in the yamas and niyamas. But all of these practices are leading us to the same road, which is uniting mind, body, and spirit with the divine in us. And this road leads to harmony within ourselves and to everything around us. So I'm hoping that in even thinking of some of these things today and that all coming together, that we're all creating more bliss and harmony in the world. And I hope that you take some of these ideas and thoughts with you and implement them into your life and create a happier version of yourself. So I also do teach yoga and meditation classes. So what I would suggest is that you find us at www.energyovermatter.com, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel for future updates and videos covering these topics. Have a blessed and wonderful day. Namaste.